Thank you, Senator Bangwa. Senator Olekina Ledama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to make some brief comments on this proposed legislation. Before I proceed, let me appreciate the distinguished senator for having taken the time to think about waste management in this country. Madam Speaker, this parliament has got an existing legislation, which I bet is broad, which is a Sustainable Waste Management Act of 2022, which is quite broad. Now, this piece of legislation, which is now referred to as the Electronic Equipment Disposable Recycling and Reuse Bill, is a narrow bill. And I asked myself when I was reading through this bill, whether it would have been better so that this bill can actually see the end of the day or light at the end of the tunnel, whether Senator Tobiko would have amended the broad Sustainable Waste Management Act to be able to incorporate her ideas on that bill, which would have been a shorter route to take than now introduce this bill, to look at what has been the challenge of implementing the existing piece of legislation. I'll take some time and try to point out, I've written quite a lot of notes here, which I'll try to refer to. And I will look at the current existing legislation and the challenges in that legislation, and what I foresee as challenges with implementing this new proposed legislation, hypothetically, if it sees the light at the end of the tunnel and it becomes law. Number one, currently, transporters have gone to court. And they have said that it is impossible to be able to segregate color code waste, particularly on organic waste. For them to be able to say, we are recycling this, we are reusing this, they have also gone to and said specifically that there are no designated organic waste or dump sites where this thing would be sent there. This has been a big struggle, and NEMA has not been able to deal with this matter. It is in court. And if you try to be realistic and try to be candid, the reason why this matter is a thorn in the flesh is because it is a business. Today, if I'm a transporter and I come to your neighborhood, your manicured neighborhood that you live in, Speaker, and I take all the trash, I dump it in Dandora. There are 1,000 people who are there working, sorting out that garbage. So the moment now you allow the segregation of this waste, particularly the organic, and you do not have a site, you are actually making other people stay hungry. And that is why people do not want these waste management bills to be able, or laws to be able to be effected or implemented. Now, I will now focus on the existing legislation, on the new bill which is being proposed. To cure that, I've seen the distinguished senator, and this is what I think is a very strong point in this proposal, where she's now said that the national government will set aside 30 acres of land which will be managed by the National E-Waste Recycling Plant. 30 acres. And who is going to fund these 30 acres? She has looked at the existing piece of legislation, and she has built on the extended producer responsibility, or what is referred to as EPR, whereby I am a producer of this bottle. The current legislation requires me to be able to ensure that I follow through the disposal of this bottle. Now, currently, who is paying for that? There is a penalty of about 20,000 shillings, which has been put. You know, NEMA requires you to give them an audit every so often on how you're going to manage that. But the distinguished senator has now said, no, you, the producer, will have to fund these waste recycling plants. You will have to fund them. I dare say that is a burden to the producer. Because you've not told that producer who is producing that e-waste, or that phone, this phone particularly, that now this is how you're going to recover your capex, the amount of money you're going to use to build that plant. You've not given them a tax incentive. I would like to request the senator to consider saying, introducing a clause that says, for this producer who is going to set up that e-plant, you're going to get a huge tax rebate for that purpose. That way, we can be fair. Number two also, you've told the Mama Mboga that now it is your responsibility to deliver this e-waste, that phone of yours, to a ward recycling center. Because this bill, unlike the 2022 Act, which is in place, it has narrowed, based on my understanding, on the following issues: collecting, sorting, and processing. But now you've told these Mama Mboga that when that phone, you are now disposing that phone, you need to take it to a particular place. And if you don't, we will charge you over 20,000 shillings. My proposal would be, since you are now already penalizing the producer and taxing the producer to setting aside, managing these 5 acres in wards levels, 30 acres in the national, in the capital centers. The best way to deal with this issue, so that you do not penalize this Mama Mboga or low-income earners who are not able to go and find that location, introduce mobile collections, where they go around in that neighborhood and then they collect. My problem that I see sometimes with a piece of legislation is that we forget that we are a developing nation. We produce legislation as if we are a developed nation, where people are disciplined. They know that there are consequences to you violating these laws. So I think in terms of equity, as well as oversight, we may need to also reduce these licensing fees. Because these licensing fees, which you have now restricted to 1 year, sometimes, honestly, every year you have to renew a license for waste. It might exclude the low-income earners, people who want to get into that business. So long as you have you give them a license for 5 years, and every so often you can carry out an audit to see whether they are complying. Or if you feel like there are people who can be able to pay more, scale it up so that you have everyone taken into consideration. So because of time, and I would like my colleague to be able to contribute to this matter as well, we have had a discussion on that, I want to reiterate on the following. When it comes to the extended producer responsibility, and I've seen that you have borrowed heavily on the existing piece of legislation of the 2022, I would suggest that you propose a tax break for the producers. So you have a balance between the producers and the consumers. Don't overburden the consumers, because the moment you, and I agree with Senator Thangwa, the moment you introduce this responsibility of the producers in managing this waste management, e-waste management centers. That amount of money will be on pass to the consumer. So to be able to ensure that you've introduced a recovery or a way for them to recover their capex, introduce tax waiver or give them a tax incentive. To finalize, I want to say that in terms of this what was being contributed by my colleagues in terms of the responsibilities. Right now, we are talking about empowering our county governments. When you give all the powers to the cabinet secretary, we are slowly clawing down on devolution, the powers in devolved governments. Right now, even NEMA is devolved. So let us encourage our counties to be able to manage their waste. Let us encourage our counties to be able to come up with policies on how their waste are managed. There are counties where you will not find a lot of e-waste. But if you have one blanket piece of legislation that covers the entire 47 counties, I bet will be a bit unfair for other counties. Now, is this a good legislation? Absolutely. Do we need to ensure that it can become law? Yes. So the task is on you, Senator Paris, to look at the existing piece of legislation, to be cognizant of the fact that there's someone waiting out there to be able to go to court and say you are over-legislating. Look at the existing piece of legislation. Look at the challenges. And I've given you one challenge. There is an active case where NEMA has not even managed to solve it. In terms of where do you dispose organic waste? Look at the business interest. How are you going to manage those things? And pay attention on the extended producer responsibility. If I'm a producer of an iPhone, if I'm a producer of a Samsung or any other phone, I want an incentive to be able to continue selling in this market. I do want. Otherwise, very soon, you will see phones that you cannot even tie into the producer. We want to be able to make sure that whatever pieces of legislation that we pass in this house can be effective. You know, we sit here and come up with legislation. We do a lot of research. But if they do not become future-centric and support our economy, they'll be of no use. I know the aim of you coming up with this bill is to promote health, reduce pollution, and most importantly, promote a circular economy. That is, I know that is the purpose. That is the aim of this. I don't know why you chose to come up with the bill alone instead of amending the existing act. But now that you have, we will support it. But think about those challenges which are there, that no one will talk about them. Otherwise, with those many remarks, and seeing that I only have 10 minutes left, I wish to support